You probably don't walk around thinking you are perfectly logical, but you likely believe your everyday choices, like comparing TV specs, starting a new diet, or preferring a specific brand, are the result of careful, objective analysis. The truth is, they aren't. In these moments, your mind is secretly deceiving you. You actually make decisions based on hidden emotional impulses and then cobble together reasonable-sounding narratives to justify them after the fact. Every human brain is infested with cognitive biases and mental shortcuts that operate completely under the radar, leading it astray without the brain even knowing it. You rely on these predictable patterns of self-deception minute by minute just to cope with reality. Ultimately, you will soon realize you are not so smart. However, by recognizing these mental blind spots, you will start to see yourself in an entirely new way. Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is a mental filter that makes you see the world in a way that matches your existing beliefs. You might think your opinions come from years of logical and objective analysis. In reality, your opinions exist because you only pay attention to information that confirms what you already think, while you completely ignore any facts that challenge those thoughts. This bias works in two main ways: passively and actively. Passively, if you are thinking about buying a certain car or recently ended a relationship, you will suddenly see that car everywhere or think every song on the radio is about love. You are simply noticing the pieces of data that connect to what is already on your mind and disregarding the rest of the chaos. The active version is much more dangerous because it distorts how you search for facts. People generally get uncomfortable when told new things. They actually crave olds, information that tells them their current worldview is correct. For example, the political punditry industry thrives entirely on providing validation rather than objective information. During the 2008 U.S. presidential election, people who supported Barack Obama bought books that praised him, while people who disliked him specifically bought books that painted him negatively. People buy these books for confirmation, not information. This bias even alters your memories. In a 1979 study by Mark Snyder and Nancy Cantor show that confirmation bias doesn't just filter the information you are looking at in the present moment, but it actually alters your memories of the past. Participants were asked to read a story about a week in the life of a fictional woman named Jane. The story was intentionally written so that Jane displayed an equal mix of introverted behaviors, quiet, keeping to herself, and extroverted behaviors, outgoing, highly social. A few days later, the researchers brought the participants back and split them into two groups to evaluate Jane for a specific career. Group 1 was asked if Jane would make a good librarian, a job stereotypically associated with introverts. Group 2 was asked if Jane would make a good real estate agent, a job stereotypically associated with extroverts. The participants' memories naturally shifted to confirm the specific question they were being asked. The librarian group easily recalled Jane's introverted traits and forgot her outgoing moments, while the real estate group remembered her being highly extroverted and forgot her quiet moments. When the researchers then asked the groups if she would be good at the other profession, both groups firmly said no, sticking to their newly biased assessments. The study proves that your brain treats your memory like a search engine that is biased toward whatever you are currently trying to validate. When you form a new belief or consider a specific idea, you unconsciously pull up past details that support that belief, and you conveniently forget or ignore the historical evidence that contradicts it. Furthermore, a 2009 study showed people spend 36% more time reading an essay if it matches their own opinions. Over time, by constantly surrounding yourself with media, books, and opinions that agree with you, you can become so overconfident in your worldview that it becomes impossible for anyone to change your mind. To fight this, you should actively seek out evidence that goes against what you believe. Procrastination. Procrastination is often misunderstood as simply being lazy or having bad time management skills. In reality, it happens because human beings have a natural weakness against immediate impulses, and we fail to think about how our own thinking works. One major cause is something called present bias. This is your inability to understand that what you want right now is not the same thing you will want later. When making plans for the future, you tend to choose healthy or productive things, like adding smart documentaries to your Netflix queue or buying healthy groceries. However, when the time comes to actually sit down or eat, you instead choose the instant fun of a comedy or the instant gratification of a cheeseburger. Another factor is hyperbolic discounting. Because the future always feels murky and uncertain, your brain naturally prefers a smaller guaranteed reward right now over a much bigger reward later on. You dump hard tasks into the future because you falsely assume your future self will magically have more free time and willpower to deal with them. To defeat procrastination, you have to practice metacognition, which means thinking about your own thinking. You must accept the hard truth that the now you cannot trust the future you to make the right choice. Your future self will always be tempted to play a video game or eat a cupcake instead of working. Because of this, you cannot just rely on good intentions or loose deadlines. You have to outsmart yourself by setting up strict systems that make it impossible for you to fail, like physically disabling your internet access while working or forcing yourself into strict, evenly spaced deadlines. Dunning-Kruger effect. You might believe you can accurately predict how well you will perform in any situation, but the truth is that you are generally terrible at estimating your own competence and the difficulty of complex tasks. When you are a beginner at something, you are far more likely to think you are an expert. This happens because the less you know about a subject, the less you believe there is to know in total. Because you lack experience, you cannot see the true complexity and nuance of the skill, and a slight advantage over other beginners makes you feel overly confident. This is why untalented people embarrass themselves on reality television shows and YouTube, genuinely believing they are amazing performers. As Charles Darwin once noted, ignorance creates confidence much more frequently than knowledge does. On the other hand, true experts often underestimate their abilities. As you practice and gain skill, you start to understand just how much you still have to learn. You discover the true masters of your craft, compare yourself to them, and easily recognize where you are lacking. In 1999, researchers Dunning-Kruger and David Dunning proved this behavior by testing students on humor and logic, finding that people were generally very poor at predicting how well they scored. Later studies showed that on difficult tasks, the worst performers were the ones who were the most inaccurate when estimating their own standing. To defeat this mental blind spot, you must practice, compare your work to the work of true lifelong experts, and be willing to eat some humble pie.